Hello. So, stuck in traffic on the day before Thanksgiving. So, good to be with you again. I really enjoy the feedback in the comment reply loop. I'm going to remember to tell the George Gershwin, Todd Duncan story. Then there's also a working title, might be End of an Age, ? Are we in the end of an age? Because I do not think it's the end of the world or that kind of thing, but it could be end of an age. And then, as soon as I turn on the video recorder, my face itches. So I was just adjusting my hat there, and it's cold out. And so probably not going to go to the Macy's Day Parade because it's going to be too cold. And then I want to tell you about a word. Introduce a word called Augee. Augee is the working spelling at this point. And then Revelation. So Sean, so welcome the candid and humble. Welcome sinners seeking good. Welcome people who know about the book of Revelation. And Sean seems to know a lot about it. And remember, I defined dumb and smart, and there's a lot of people with degrees, etc., that are not smart. They're overeducated. The scarecrow had a brain before he got the piece of paper. It's okay to get that. I did add MAT to the end of info artist, JK, MAT as in Master of Arts and Teaching. So I'm remembering that I did work pretty hard to get that, so I wanted to put that on there. But you can know a lot, like Sean was saying, knows a lot from reading, from watching preachers, watching scholars, and then bottom line, read it yourself. So really good advice there. So the Todd Duncan, George Gershwin story that Todd Duncan told me, so I'll give the context and then try to remember what Todd Duncan told me at his studio. I can still picture him sitting at the piano. Like I said, he was 89 to 92 when I studied with him. This is the early 90s, and great guy. So what I read after Todd Duncan told me the story was that George Gershwin had auditioned 100 people, 100 baritones. He was looking for a baritone to create the role of Porgy in Porgy and Bess, and he was proving himself. He knew he could do classical and could write opera, but most of the critics didn't think that. And Porgy and Bess came out in 1935. It wasn't until the 70s when the opera community officially recognized Porgy and Bess as grand opera, but it was actually grand opera from the start. So there's a lot of dum-dums, people who are caught up in the social fabric of the time or what it's supposed to be. He's Tin Pan Alley, so how can this be opera? But they don't trust and so people that are on this channel that I really welcome are people who trust their mind, heart, soul, and gut. God gave you the ability to understand these things. So the story is he couldn't find anybody because most of the people who auditioned for George Gershwin in New York City sang pop songs because he was Tin Pan Alley, which is writing a lot of pop songs. And he had been, I don't know how long, 100 baritones for a long time, and he couldn't find his baritone, his Porgy. And then I've heard two different people. A New York Times music critic recommended Todd Duncan because Todd Duncan was singing opera in New York City at the time, but Gershwin hadn't heard of him. Much different time in the 30s in terms of information distribution. And or I heard someone else recommended Todd Duncan, but it came recommended to George Gershwin that this guy Todd Duncan might be your Porgy. So they got word to Todd Duncan, and he went to audition for George Gershwin at some music place, wherever that was, in New York City at the time. And this would be the early 30s, so it could be, Porgy and Bess came out in 35, so it could be 33, 34. So Todd Duncan told me he barely had any money, so he couldn't pay an accompanist, so he showed up with music. And George Gershwin said, where's your accompanist, the piano player, to play along while he auditioned? And Todd Duncan said, well, you can play it, and gave him the music. And Gershwin said something like, oh, I don't know, I can't read this, or I don't know these songs. And it was some kind of an art song. And Todd Duncan said George Gershwin played it perfectly. But he only played about 8 measures, because after hearing Todd Duncan sing for 10 seconds, he said, I want you as my Porgy. Will you be my Porgy? And most singers would jump at the chance, but Todd Duncan said, well, I haven't heard your music. I need to hear your music. And Todd Duncan, very serious guy, had a good sense of humor, but he was a very serious guy. And so he's not going to make a decision unless he hears the music. It's got to be more operatic. He knew George Gershwin as Tin Pan Alley. So George Gershwin, I think, laughed and said, all right, we'll come back next week, and I'll audition for it, and I'll play my songs for you. I'll play my music. And Todd Duncan said, I can't come back. I can't afford the train. And so Gershwin gave him money to get a train back to New York, get his wife, Gladys, who I also met. And I think I'm here with my wife. She's right here watching something on her, so she's got headphones on. I think my wife met Gladys also. Did you meet Gladys? Duncan? All right, she can't hear me. So Gladys Duncan, Todd Duncan's wife, died when she was 105. So she lived long after Todd Duncan died at 95. So he gets his wife, and they take the train back up and goes to George Gershwin's apartment and walks in, and there's George Gershwin, Ira Gershwin. I know there were some other famous people. About 50 friends of George Gershwin were in there for George Gershwin to audition for Todd Duncan. and I know they all thought it was funny, but they also appreciated picking somebody who's that serious, who's not just going to do it unless they can enjoy the music. So I'll pick it up. So George Gershwin, so Todd Duncan sits down with his wife among all these people at the New York City apartment of George Gershwin, and George Gershwin starts playing. And then Todd Duncan tells me he starts playing plinkety plink. That's the words that Todd Duncan used. Plinkety plink, like Tin Pan Alley. And Todd Duncan didn't like it, and he turned to Gladys. He told me he turned to Gladys, his wife, and said, I don't know about this. And he is the type of personality, he might not have cared if other people saw him do that. He was a very straightforward, honest guy. And if he didn't like something, he would tell you. So he's turned to her like, I don't know. And he's playing the overture and the songs. And then Todd Duncan stopped and heard this incredible sound come from the piano. And he said the heavens opened up. And he knew right then and there that he wanted to be Porgy. He wanted to be George Gershwin's Porgy, because Gershwin started to play Summertime. And Todd Duncan said, if someone who can write a song like that, I want to be part of it. And I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, and I can see Todd Duncan telling me that. So I know it's the time. So let's see, look at my note. B flat. Bess, you is my woman now. And then, I Got Plenty of Nuttin' and all those great songs. So that's a story, and time is... So Augee, the word Augee, A-U-G-E-E for right now, but the G like mirage, Augee, is contextual. So it's being down and sad and lonely, but surrounded by lots of people. So, and a billionaire can be an Augee, and a poor person can be an Augee. It's like, for example, a quarterback who messes up the play and loses the game, and they're on the sideline along a lot of people, but they're an Augee.